I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Capella University is rethinking higher education. With its game-changing FlexPath learning format, you can earn your degree on your schedule and fit your education seamlessly into your life. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network. Today on the James Altucher Show.
In general, people say it's better to own a home. Do you have anything to add to their argument?
I don't own a home. I mean, I think I've always felt guilty a lot of times about not doing it. But
Why?
then, because I think for that very reason, because it's been imbued in me, about home ownership and, hey, you are throwing away money.
Well, let's just examine the math of that. Compound interest, this is my favorite calculator. If you look at the actual numbers, owning a home and going to college, which everybody does, you basically cost yourself between $1 and $5 million, depending on how you do it, in the time of your life, which was the money you needed to retire. And without doing anything else, you could have, just by not owning a home and not going to college, all of your kids will be able to take care of themselves.
Wow.
All right. Steve Cohen on the podcast with me. We're answering questions and just riffing.
Yes, it's exciting to be back with you, James.
So I wanted to update something I wrote about a long time ago, which were the 10 commandments of the American religion. I feel like advertising and marketing and branding has created these beliefs among U.S. citizens that have hurt our society, hurt everybody's pocketbooks, and people irrationally argue to the bone to stand up for these things that are just not so smart. So one of them, which everybody will argue with me about, and I get it, but one of them is owning a home. Everybody feels like it's a good thing to own a home. They say if you're renting, you're flushing money down the toilet.
Sure.
And if you own a home, the idea is it goes up in value and it's a good source of savings as opposed to the stock market. It's very rare for home prices to go down. It's only happened once in the past 60 years, which is a financial crisis. And in general, people say it's better to own a home. Do you have anything to add to their argument?
I don't own a home. I mean, I think I've always felt guilty a lot of times about not doing it. But
Why?
then because I think for that very reason, because it's been imbued in me, about home ownership and, hey, you are throwing away money and you need to,
Well, let's just examine the math of that. So in New York City, let's just make numbers up.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, a typical rent might be $5,000.
Sure.
right? And for like a 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah,
in
it's
a-
probably between like 3,000 and 4,000 for a 1-bedroom to rent. But
Yeah.
sure, let's
Let's just say 5,000.
yeah.
And now for a
Our
1-bedroom,
listeners in Oklahoma and
no, New York City
in
is
the
disgusting.
Midwest,
You should
yeah,
not live
exactly.
don't live in Manhattan.
Right. Like when you had moved to Cold Spring, you weren't paying.
When I moved to Cold Spring, though, at some point I realized, oh my gosh, this is easy to live here. Like, 'cause the
Right.
rent's nothing and it's beautiful and it's nature. And then I had to move back to New York City. But if you don't have to live here, you probably shouldn't live here. It's too expensive to live here. But let's just look at it.
So yeah, if let's say you're paying 5,000 a
And
month.
what would you pay? How much would it cost to own a 1-bedroom apartment in the same building? That where you're spending
maybe 600,000 or
5,000.
700,000. I mean, no, then it'd be like $1 million probably.
Yeah, so $1 million.
Right.
Okay, so in one case, you're paying 5,000 a month. Let's just look at today, how much money is in your bank account.
Sure.
And then we'll look at 5 years from now. So I don't want to get too much into math. It's not going to be boring. But if I wanted to buy $1 million home, I've got to put down probably $250,000 or $300,000.
Yes.
So the guy who's paying $5,000 a month rent, where is he finding the $300,000 to
100%.
buy the exact same apartment?
Yeah.
And then, okay, you have a $700,000 mortgage, right? If you're putting $300,000 down,
Yes.
and you're paying about a 6% interest
Right.
rate. Is that
Sure.
what
Yes.
interest rates are? So you're taking a $700,000 at a 6% interest rate. So that's about almost $4,000 a year. So
Right.
so now you just gave $300,000 to the
Right.
bank, and you borrowed $700,000. So now instead of paying $5,000 a month rent, you're paying $4,000 in just interest.
Right.
Okay, so that's money you are throwing down the toilet because that's just the
Right.
interest payment. And let's say you got a 30-year mortgage, and
Taxes, maintenance.
so taxes and then maintenance, you're probably spending like up to $6,000 to $8,000 a month, and
Exactly.
it's volatile. You don't know how much you're going to pay because of the maintenance. It
Yeah.
could be $10,000 one month, zero the next month. The taxes, you have no control. The government tells you how much you owe in housing taxes. You have no control over that.
Yeah.
You with your income, you kind of have control over the taxes you pay. The more money you make, the more taxes you pay.
Yeah, interesting.
With housing, they tell you what your house is worth and what taxes you pay, and people argue with this all the time. It's not fair. And so
And what kind of tax deduction are you getting? Like,
you don't get
obviously-
any tax deduction anymore on the interest payments. That's a new tax,
Oh, wow.
the Trump tax laws.
Oh, interesting.
So which could be an argument for housing prices going down in the future because
Sure.
a big benefit of owning
Yeah.
a home, getting that deduction no longer exists. So
you get some. I mean, I feel like so many people. I mean, house.
no. I mean,
Oh,
we can
interesting.
Google it, but
Yeah.
okay,
No.
let's say you get a tax deduction, okay?
Yeah, I think you definitely do.
You're still
it's
paying-
probably reduced.
Instead of paying $5,000 a month
Sure.
rent, let's just compare. Renting, you're paying $5,000 a month rent, and owning, you're out $300,000 cash. Like you can't borrow that.
Right.
That's the amount you're just out, is gone from your bank account.
Right.
And you're paying more money per month. You're paying $6,000 to $8,000 a
Right.
month minimum.
Right.
Maybe more.
Right.
And so where's the throwing the money down the toilet? You're throwing the money down the toilet when you own. Now, so let's look at the other side of that. You're not making, let's see, housing
Yeah.
goes up 6%.
Right.
Oh, here's my phone.
That's your mortgage broker.
No, it's seamless because I always order it. Hold on, I'm going to answer it on the podcast. Hello? Yeah, this is James. You're out of avocado. How could you be out of avocado? My daughter needs her avocado. What kind of protein? Okay, tuna. Regular tuna. No problem. Thank you, Seamless. Bye. All right. It's about time Seamless gets a little. Seamless is our sponsor. No. That'd be great if Seamless was our sponsor and that was the ad.
Yeah, let's
Like, they
let's
gave great
see, because
service.
you're so great to them and you love their avocado service.
Well,
But
no,
Seamless, we're gonna
they
reach out
called
to
up
you.
and they're willing. See here, okay, we're gonna get to grocery stores in a second,
Yes.
so
yes.
that'll be next.
That's not part of the 10 Commandments of the American religion.
No, it kind of is actually.
Yes. Oh, good. Okay.
So again, the benefit of owning home then is that you might make more money than you would have
Right.
if you so So in again, when you're renting, you have an extra $300,000 in your pocket.
Yes.
Which, by the way, is not trivial. Like
Sure.
like you could sleep at night with the extra $300,000 in your
Right.
bank. But and potentially you can make money with that. So I don't know, and it's not a given that every piece of real estate makes money. I've owned
Yeah.
houses several times and lost money each time.
I gotta be honest, because like I think I brought up my discomfort at not owning, and I think sometimes it may not make sense to pay at New York City to buy something at New York City prices, right? We're looking
I agree
through
with
those
that.
lens. If you were
But
in,
I think that's
if
true
you
for all
were-
the US though.
That's fine, but I do think I felt a little bit differently when I started working with you, because you're a guy who had a ton of money and had a lot of money and then lost it, but then you made it again, then you lost it, but then you made it again. And so even if you did all those
Why are you
things-
making me feel bad on the podcast?
I think it's amazing. I think it's actually inspiring to everybody out there, which is but I think so you're kind of, like what I would say, like you start from where you are, and we spend a lot of time feeling guilty about certain things. And yes, it could be the collective pressure of society thinking you need to do this a certain way.
Well, I think it's
And-
because like, from what I understand, this may or may not be, this is what I've read and what I've heard, but let's just take it with a grain of salt. Fannie Mae or some part of the real estate industry is what created the notion. It was a marketing
Sure.
term, the
Yeah, of
American
course.
dream. The idea of owning a house in the suburbs with a yard and the white picket fence, that became this mythology of the American dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it was just a marketing scam because they lend you the money, and that Fannie Mae backs a lot of the loans
Yes, for sure.
from the banks. So they make money on every person who borrows money to buy a house. So of course they're going to have all this. And then here's the other thing too: the 100 million people or so who own homes, they are incentivized to say it's better to own a home because they don't want people to stop owning homes
for
because that's how
sure.
prices rise.
Yeah,
So
it's
they'll always
confirmation
argue.
bias for
Yeah,
them,
there's
yeah.
confirmation bias, and there's also kind of self-interest to get other people to do what you've done, particularly if it helps prices rise in your area. But the other thing is, and I'll play devil's advocate against myself. Some people really do like the roots of knowing
Yes.
for the next 18 years, their kids
Yeah.
are zero. They'll grow up with the same
Yeah.
friends and the same school system. Like I rent an apartment right now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay there
Yeah.
more than 3 years, say.
Sure.
But the average American buys and sells a house every 4.5 years. So that's the churn. That's the average churn on home ownership. So that argument that argument works, and I get it, except the fact that in practice it doesn't happen for most people. If the average is 4.5, some people hold it for 20 years. Some people only hold a home for 1 or 2 years.
Yeah. I think what I've learned, probably it's been reinforced since working with you, is obviously like as you have a chance to kind of question why we do things. We're going to get to your other 9 commandments, but I think it's not one size fits all. And I think we waste a lot of energy trying to adhere to cultural mores for whatever reason they've been, engendered upon us, and we waste rather than saying, okay, what is actually best for me, And so for some people, they might be able to justify it, or they may be able to irrationally explain, like, in behavioral economics, right? A lot of people do things and they spend money on certain things and skimp on others, and they have a reason for feeling okay about it. It doesn't bother them that much about it.
Right. Like, let's say someone takes that $300,000 instead of, and they don't buy a house. Here's the thing also about buying a house as an investment. I get it why you might want to do it as an investment if you're a big believer in real estate. But who would take, here are the qualifications of a bad investment. It's all your money, you're borrowing also, and it's illiquid, meaning you can't, like a stock I could sell tomorrow, but a house, exactly when you need the cash is exactly when you can't sell it. So, because like when the economy's tanking, you can't sell your house and you need the cash. So now you're suddenly depressed and stressed.
Okay. Now I remember you had this argument this conversation with Jim Norton when you were on his show, and he said, "Well, I like to own a house," because they asked you about living in Airbnbs, which is decidedly not owning anything.
Right.
And then
renting.
he said, well, I live in the city. I feel comfortable. It just gives me something. I know if everything else, falls to pot for me, at least I still have my apartment.
But that's not true though, because if you don't pay back the bank and you don't pay back and you don't pay your
Hear that, Jim
taxes.
Norton? Hear that, Jim Norton?
If you don't pay your state taxes,
Your
which by the way, you're
elementary
paying
school
more.
friend. Yeah.
You're paying more than rent for your interest and the taxes and the maintenance. If you don't pay for any of these things,
Right.
the bank's you don't own your house. The bank's going to take it, or the government's going to take it, or your house is going to fall apart if you don't pay the maintenance.
Yeah, for sure. For
So
sure.
so I'm not sure you actually have anything. And even when you own it outright, you still have the taxes and the maintenance,
Sure.
which could be as much as rent in some years. So I'm gonna just figure out, if you have, let's say you're 30 years old and you're gonna buy a house in New York City. Now again, it's different than other places. And let's say you compound at 6%,
Right.
which is low. Years to grow, 30. Let's just say 30 years. You're gonna own it from 30 to 60. Annual addition, 0. Hold on, I'm using my compound interest calculator. This is not working. I have to find another compound interest calculator. Money Chimp, you cannot be a sponsor of this podcast. Okay, so 300,000, length of time, 30 years, interest rate, 6%, compound annually, calculate. Okay, so that $300,000 in 30 years would turn into
Wow.
1.723 million. So, and that's only compounding at 6%. You know,
Right.
if you go to, there's a lot of different ways you can make more. 6% is like conservative.
Sure.
The stock market goes up on average like 7 or 8%
Yeah.
per year, and that's just passively investing in the stock market. So, I mean, and
Yeah.
1 percentage point, people don't realize makes a big difference. So let's just say 7%. The same time period, everything else the same. That's $2.3 million with that 300,000. So it's not such a bad thing, and it's
Yes.
probably less risky because you could diversify more, and it's more liquid, so you
Sure.
can get access to cash when you need it. $2.3 million, enough to retire on by the time you're 60.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and so I don't see.
And move to a cheaper place than a $5,000 apartment. in
Well,
New York
once the
City.
kids are
Yeah.
out of the house, move to
Yeah.
a cheaper place,
Yeah.
or move out of the city for one thing.
Yeah.
So again, I don't see the only benefit I really see is the confidence that you could stay there for 18 years. Given
Yeah.
that you're going to pay more money, you're going to take more financial risk, and it's a worse investment, and you can't get out of this investment even if you want to. So that's the only benefit I see.
And it's interesting because, you know, you'd written a great post about this, and you were just talking about how this is considered to be the biggest kind of blasphemy, right? Like you said, you could say other, like, these are among the things that people could say about, like, hey, you need to own a home, you need to go to college, and some of these other ones. And you've written about this before, and what's the kind of reaction you usually get?
People get really angry. Like, I once was giving a talk. So I used to be a spokesperson for Fidelity, and I was once giving a talk for them, and I said this in the talk, and people were like, really, they were like screaming at me, because you can't, because again, it's a cognitive bias, confirmation bias, and you're arguing against, the asset prices going up for them. If you're saying, if you're telling people don't buy a home, that's like telling someone who owns Apple,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to tell everybody else in the world to not buy Apple stock.
Sure.
So people get very upset because
They feel like you're jeopardizing their investment.
and just think about it. It's the biggest financial risk many people will ever take in their entire lives.
Sure.
But at the same time, most people then don't have money for retirement. Like less than 5% of people, when they retire, have more than enough money to last them a year.
Right.
And so here I just gave you away. Oh, instead of putting the money down in the house, you have $2.3 million when you retire. It's not trivial.
Yeah.
So like you look at all these big things that people spend money on, and then you wonder why they can't afford retirement. So the next commandment is, of course, college educations. Now, I've talked and written about this a lot, but let's just update this a little bit.
Yeah.
Since 1977, tuitions have gone up faster than inflation by 10%. Not on average, but every single year has gone up 10% or more faster than inflation every single year. Medical costs have gone up faster than inflation every year since 1977 also by about 3%. So tuitions by far, why are tuitions going up so much? And meanwhile, student loan debt is $1.5 trillion, more than $1.5 trillion now. Who has student loan debt? Kids age 18 to 35. Guess what? Wages for people ages 18 to 35 have been flat versus inflation since 1992. So that's 27 years now wages have been flat for the exact people where
Yeah.
student loan debt has been going up. And then on top of it, student loan debt, oddly, is the only kind of debt you can't get rid of in a bankruptcy. So, Steve, if I owe
Yeah.
you money and then you want the money back and I go bankrupt, I don't have to pay you.
Wow.
Or if I owe the bank
Yeah.
money for a house, I don't have to pay the bank.
Sure.
But if I owe the government money for a
Yeah.
student loan, and the government also set up this company, Sally Mae, kind of like Fannie Mae, but for student loans.
Yeah.
If I owe the government money, the government will come in and chase me for the rest of my life
Yes.
and get those student loans for me,
Right.
whether I'm bankrupt or not.
Right. And I've read a lot of articles about that, just the relentlessness of student debt and how it's really affected a lot of those people. Now, I'll play the devil's advocate too, but like maybe then it's okay, maybe don't go to a school that costs $75,000 a year. Maybe go to a cheaper school.
I agree.
Yes.
But more schools than ever are costing
Yes,
more than
yes.
50,000. Like, try to find
Yeah.
a school in the top 100, particularly if it's
Yeah.
out of state, that
Yes.
where
For sure.
like what school did you go to?
University of Michigan in Ann Arbor.
University of Michigan. My dad
yeah.
went there as well.
Yeah, great place to go.
And we had a recent podcast guest, right? Who went to the university?
Jordan Harbinger,
Brad Meltzer.
Brad Meltzer. Oh yeah, Brad, the man. Yeah, Brad actually spoke at Michigan Law School the other
So
day.
University of Michigan, which is a public school, right?
Yes.
It's owned by the government.
Yes.
The out-of-state tuition is $43,000 a year.
Yeah, I mean, and it's
That was 2016, so it's probably more right now.
I think it's definitely more, and yeah, and
And it was cheap. It was probably
it was cheaper.
27,000 a year when
Yes,
you went.
Yes, which is obviously a long time.
So
ago.
it's gone
Yeah.
up. It's gone up faster than inflation.
Yes.
And it's going to continue to go faster than inflation. And again, you get a loan for that. You're paying 6. So you're not paying. Okay, where's my calculator?
And when
So-
you went to Cornell, like
Yeah,
same kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I borrowed money, but I graduated a year early
Wow.
to avoid paying an. I paid for
wow.
everything,
Oh,
right? I
wow.
paid for all my
No, I
tuition,
did not.
and I borrowed all the money, and I actually, believe it or not, won some chess tournaments that helped me pay, and I probably worked 40 hours a week at jobs on top of the 6 courses a semester I was
wow.
taking because I wanted to graduate early
Wow.
to not pay, and then I took courses every summer. But let's say
You couldn't even enjoy the amazing social life that Ithaca has to offer.
I was not able to. So
Okay.
let's say 45,000 times 4 is 180,000, right?
Yeah.
So 180,000, and what we're gonna pay this back over 30 years. We're gonna pay what's interest on the student loan?
That I do not know.
Let's just say it's 6%.
Yeah, 6%. Which is probably conservative. Yeah.
Yeah, conservative. I'm being as conservative as possible. So somebody going to University of Michigan, they're not paying $180,000 tuition. They're paying $1,033,000 tuition.
Wow.
Because of the interest, and you can't get rid of that. And they're not making any more money than people did
Yeah.
27 years ago when tuitions were much less. So what are you getting in your college education that's worth $1 million? Like, let's say you start working a job at the age of 18. So
Right.
now instead of spending $50,000 a year, you're making
Yes.
$50,000 a year, and you're saving it, and you don't have the debt. Like, you're saving on this $1 million. So
Right.
presumably you could, as you accumulate money, you could invest it instead of putting it into paying down your debt. What people say, oh well, you can't get a job if you're telling me if you start at 18 accumulating skills, you can't in 30 years. Not only will you have avoided paying off $1 million for your tuition, you would have made $1 million plus the interest on that. So, actually, no. In 30 years, you would make probably. All right, we're going to start off with 0. We're going to use compound interest. This is my favorite calculator. We're going to contribute. Let's just say you only make $40,000 a year. Okay, you don't have a college tuition, so you have some job making $40,000 a year. I'm being again conservative. 30 years. And let's say when you invest, you only make 4%. I'm being extra conservative.
Right.
So you didn't go to college, but you start off making $40,000 a year, and you never add to your salary. Your salary always stays $40,000 because people think incorrectly that you won't get a good job and you'll always be working in a bodega or something. Let's see how much you'll have. You'll have $26 million.
Wow.
So That's if you always save and you start off
Yeah.
at 18, and by the time you're 48, maybe
Right.
no.
Seems a lot of money.
No, but I'm looking at the thing. I'm amount of money you have available initially, 0. Amount that you plan to add. Oh shoot. I
Thank
did
you.
it wrong. Okay.
Yes. That's
let's
why I
say
need to go to college, take some math classes.
4,000 a month, 4% interest, okay, 2.7 million.
Sure.
So
sure.
so
Yes.
again, and now that's in a world where most people are going to college and they're retiring with less than a year's worth of money. They can never
Yeah.
retire because they're spending their whole
Yeah.
you're not finished paying your student loans off till your 40s or 50s. So so let's play devil's advocate now. The benefit is you can get jobs like
Yeah.
doctor or lawyer. There's some
Sure.
jobs
sure.
where by law you have to go to
Yeah.
college. But forget
Yeah.
those for a
Yeah,
second.
yeah.
You know, to be a computer programmer, you don't need by law you don't need a degree, and you can get more skills at Khan
100%.
Academy or
Yeah.
Code Academy than
Yeah.
you would in college, because college is a little bit, just by
Yeah.
definition, their textbooks are a few years out of date, and you can actually start working instead of just always working to pay back your debt. I mean, what's the argument for college?
Friends, socialization.
Yes. But let's say you were interested in
yeah.
being a television producer, right? You were a TV news producer for
the
years.
TV news producer.
If you didn't go to college now,
Yes.
you could start off as an intern at the age of
100%,
18
yeah.
at NBC, and
Yeah.
you'll rise up after you know the people. No one's going to ask you, well, where was your
Yeah.
degree?
Yeah. Well, yes. I wonder if that's a barrier to entry. There have been people who didn't graduate or, go to college. I don't think Peter Jennings went. There are other people who. So yes, or conceivably you could start there and then start at college for a semester just to get in, and then drop out, and then you could
And then
rise
you
up.
say, like, no one's ever asked to see my degree.
No,
Like,
and you
potentially,
threw it out too.
potentially I could have. I mean, I suppose someone in a background check could call my alma
Yes.
mater and say, "Did James go there?"
Yeah,
They would say yes, hopefully, and graduated. But I almost didn't graduate. I
Yeah.
kind of had to cheat in order to graduate because I was graduating in 3 years. You needed
Wow.
at least a 3.0 GPA.
Wow.
I had a 2.999.
Wow.
And I was getting a D- that last
Wow.
semester in Fortran. And I begged the professor, just give me a D+ so I could
Wow.
graduate. And he did. He just
Wow.
just said he changed the minus to a plus and handed it in. And so I got lucky.
D+ rather than a D-, or like is it C+?
No, to get to I just
Okay.
needed to move my 2.999
Yeah,
up
yeah,
to a
sure.
3.0.
Sure.
Out
You
of
don't be
like
greedy. Yeah.
So
Wow.
but your point is about the socialization and the friends.
Yeah.
If you were in a city and working, wouldn't you be able to make some friends?
Yes.
And you're 18?
But it's interesting. So Charles Barkley, there's a college basketball player named Zion Williamson, and he hurt himself the other day at a game that was like Duke, North Carolina, and President Obama was there, and a lot of people, and it was a very public thing because he's this luminary in college sports. And people are like, dude, you're gonna be the number 1 pick in the draft. Just sit out. You don't need to play. Like, protect your benefit. And I heard Charles Barkley say, listen, when did we become that obsessed about money, where money is everything? You're a basketball player. You play basketball. Can't you do that for the school? You made a commitment. And it made me think about, what you're talking about. Like, I like to say the cynic knows the cost of everything, the value of nothing, but I think you wrote the book Choose Yourself. So what essentially you're saying is choose yourself, right? So
Right. And you don't need the blessings of, let's say,
right.
I'm going to keep picking on University of Michigan.
Sure.
But you don't need the blessings of University of Michigan to signal that you're a computer programmer or a competent news producer or whatever.
Yeah,
you
of
could
course.
earn it through skill acquisition, and you can earn it the hard way by
Yeah.
working hard. Like
Yeah,
you
for
said the
sure.
other day, actions
Yeah,
are
yeah.
more important than thoughts.
Yeah, exactly.
So now the idea that a diploma somehow has conferred credibility on you is just a thought,
I
a
agree.
dream.
No, I agree.
I mean, I went to undergrad for computer science, and I went to grad school for computer
Yeah.
science, and I had to take remedial computer classes to be as good as the worst programmer at my first job. So it didn't really
yeah.
give me that much value. Now, I do agree you do meet like-minded friends, and it helps you
Sure.
kind of socialize from youth to adulthood. But think about it this way too. As an adult, Like, I'm 51 years old. I don't think I have even a single friend who's 51 years old. As an
Right.
adult, you're not really friends with people your age.
Right.
Like, how old are you?
I'm 49. I'll be 50.
Right, so you would have been like a little kid.
Yeah,
You would have been in 10th grade when I'm telling you. Jay, how old are you?
Please.
He's 30, so Jay's 21 years older than
Yeah.
me. Robin's here.
Yeah.
She's not my age.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, but I think
we're not going to say a
friends,
woman's age on the
James,
air.
you have friends who your age, and as you know, and but I don't even. Okay, let's say I think let's say you're 18 and you want to go to college and you say I'm not sure if I want to go to law school. I might want to go. I love the law. I watched L.A. Law and I watched Legally Blonde and I love it and I want to go to law. Like, how do you know unless you try, right?
Yeah. So and if you want to be,
But how do you know?
So unfortunately, some professions
Right.
legally it's against the law to not go
Yes.
to college.
Right.
But okay, yes, you're right for there. If I want to be a lawyer,
or you
I
want
got
to
to
be a
go to college.
doctor, and you say, hey, I love, but yeah, I think what you're saying is there seems to be a conventional religion where we're all kind of, whether it's culturally or these mores where we're all there's a group think, and it's not. There are more people than you think don't need to adhere to that.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode.
If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking, Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
The other argument, which is related to the socialization, and I think this argument is maybe the strongest, and I've seen you benefit from it, is the networking potential that college gets you.
Oh, yeah.
So you go to visit University of Michigan all the time. You have a lot of friends from there. I've even met a lot of your friends. So 30 years later, you're keeping in touch with these people, which is really good.
I go back with Jason, Levon, Bursley, and Lance. And
Brad Meltzer.
Brad Meltzer is the greatest person ever. Yeah, I mean.
How many podcast guests have we had from your University of Michigan connections, actually?
Well, we like Jillian Siegel, who, is great. We met Tom Frank, the great comedian. So, a lot of friends,
So I think there's some value there. But if outside of the top 20 schools, how valuable is the networking? And I won't call out any school in particular, but just some random liberal arts school in Kentucky. How good is, and nothing against Kentucky or anything, but how powerful is the networking?
Yeah, I think there are, because if you went to Louisville or University of Kentucky, I think there is. I think what I always tell you, things work out best for those who make the best of the way things work out. So if you're going to
boom,
but if you go to University of Kentucky and you go there and you all worked at the Cat's Paws newspaper and you loved it and you
but if you had been an intern working for
the Lexington Herald Leader,
or the Louisville Gazette, I don't even know, and then you would also make connections there, and then everybody would have been, you would have stood out too, that's the kid, he was so bright at 18.
100%.
He brought us that story when we were paying him nothing. And
it's like in the Jay-Z, there's a million ways to get it, and choose one, and I think it's a choice, right?
I do think if someone wants to go to college, which, the thing is, if your kid wants to go to college and you put your foot down and say, no, I know this all too well, maybe I was a wimp about it. Like my daughter does go to college. Maybe I was a wimp about it. I could have said, oh, no, I'm not letting you go and I'm not letting you borrow because that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
But then maybe she hates me for the next 10 years. I don't think I would have been able to deal with that.
But I also think, that expression, the problem isn't the problem. The problem could become the perception of the problem. Is the problem about college itself, or is the problem with the really aggressive pricing? Today, I was watching a story about a school in New York, and this woman was suing them because she expressed interest in going to DeVry, and she was a single mother and wanted to learn those skills, and they aggressively courted her, and they wanted her to pay. Then she couldn't pay, and then they kicked her out, and then her credit screwed up. She doesn't have the degree.
And by the way, that's another situation
yeah.
that's even worse, which is those are corporations, DeVry, and University of Phoenix and some other ones.
Also not going to be a sponsor for our podcast.
I'm not putting them down either. It's just a different category.
Yeah,
I'm just
100%.
talking about the general accredited colleges.
But I do think like they're a for-profit thing. They have interest in making money on, obviously. They have these huge endowments, and that's why you see a lot of politicians saying, "Hey, should college be free? Certainly should community colleges be free?"
Like my daughter is studying acting.
Yes.
Which she was debating between neuroscience or neurobiology and acting. I actually encouraged her to do acting because I feel like that's a skill as opposed to some degree she's probably not going to be a neurobiologist. So as opposed to some degree she could just read about in books for free and get a skill. That's not an actual skill, whereas acting is a very difficult skill.
Yeah.
But even there, I said to her, why not at least take a year off and come to New York City or move to LA and try auditioning for a year, because that's the bulk 100%. Of beginning acting careers. See if you like that lifestyle. See if you have that skill set that you can handle psychologically, that lifestyle. But, she likes the socialization. She liked kind of the pseudo extension of high school, which I totally disagree with. I think she could have, if she moved to New York to do auditioning, she would have met all the other kids who had the same interests as her and who were also auditioning. And she
would have found that tribe there.
Yeah, and then she would have also learned much more quickly and for much less expense. She would have learned whether she wanted to pursue that as a career, or she would have made a network of people in other branches.
But what if she said, "Oh, I want to go to Juilliard"?
I don't know. I mean, I think still she might not like, you don't want to learn a skill just for the fun of it. If you have to pay, $1 million for it in the long run with interest and everything, you want to learn a skill. First of all, acting is a skill you could learn with an acting coach for much cheaper.
Yeah, for sure.
And experiencing, getting on stage is the only way to build a skill like that. So you either get on stage paying $1 million, or you get on stage with them paying you, or you get on stage in some kind of volunteer theater or whatever. So again, I do think though, if someone wants to go to college, community college for 2 years and then transferring is a good way. But a lot of kids don't want to do that either.
Yeah, interesting. I think, and I watch younger people now and they get in college, and I think most older people aren't like, hey, you need to go to this place, or you don't, unless they're snobs or they have other reasons for pushing people to go to that school. I remember Frank Bruni of the New York Times wrote a great book called like "Who You Are Is Not Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be," or where you are, and it's just the idea that, okay, he looked at every president, looked at every person who was successful, and he looked back and they didn't all go to Harvard or Yale or
right. It's a modern thing. Kids couldn't get loans when you and I went to we couldn't borrow that kind of money.
Yeah.
That's why since 2004, I think student loan debt's gone from 200 billion to 1.6 trillion, because the government, the US government, realized, oh my God, 18-year-olds are idiots. They're willing to borrow $250,000 from us, even under the terms where they could never not pay it back because we got them.
Yeah.
So the US government, they're in favor of every kid in the world going to college because they're making a ton of money across,
absolutely.
100 million. I think something like I think 22 million people have some form of student loan debt.
And I think at some point there'll be a bubble, like kind of like the subprime mortgage.
But it won't be like the subprime. And actually, it's funny you say that. So a lot of people who don't fully, I mean, you know more than most people, but a lot of people who don't understand what happened in the financial crisis compare the student loan bubble to the subprime mortgage bubble. They're different because hedge funds don't, bundle up student loans into derivatives, and then sell them with huge leverage.
Oh, interesting.
So there's it's impossible for there to be. There might be a bubble socially, but there's not a bubble in terms of like a financial crisis.
Gotcha.
But in terms of its effect on the financial system, if one group of people have 1.6 trillion in debt, and another group of people, i.e. the children of rich people, don't have any debt, this is what increases income inequality. So the children of the rich people, they're going to marry other people with
Yeah.
no debt. There's studies that show you kind of marry people in
Yeah.
your same financial strata.
Who you met at college.
Who we met at college potentially. And then your children, they're not going to have financial debt. So income inequality. So
Yeah.
these two sides, they become
The haves
more
and the have-nots
separate.
become
Yeah. And this
more
is,
polarized.
I think this is what has led to the creation of the extremes politically. Donald Trump on one side, and let's say the Bernie Sanders on the other side, is that, we're getting more and more separate as a society. And I think
Sure.
income inequality is getting more separate. And I think the source of that is actually student loan debt. And I know it's all with good intentions. So
Yeah.
when Lyndon B. Johnson started backing student loans, when the GI Bill started paying veterans to go to college, these are the best intentions. Get people an education. It was
Sure.
good thinking. But the net effect of it 50 years later is that income inequality is greater. So you just have to be, you can't be,
Unintended consequences.
right,
of
it's
it, yeah.
unintended consequences, and you can't be for one without understanding it affects the other thing. Otherwise, there's hypocrisy. So if you're fine with income inequality, which is not really good for society in the long term, the only way income inequality there's a book, The Great Leveler by I forget the author now, but there's a book that goes through the history of every single society in history that had larger than normal income
Yeah.
inequality, kind of like the income inequality we have in America. And he basically concluded it only ended through either war or disease.
Oh, wow.
And like Germany being an example
Yeah.
after World War One, and so on. There's many examples. He gave like 1,000 examples, but I don't know what the solution is, because
Yeah.
I think the only solution is the government stop backing student loans. But so many people will say that's so many people who are not thinking 50 years
Yeah.
ahead.
Right.
We're all thinking 50 years ahead when it comes to climate change.
Right.
Like people are obsessed with, no, you got to think about your great grandchildren who don't even exist yet. They're not even like,
yeah. And I also think like, okay, you could say, okay, well, some of those people shouldn't go to these schools. And then that may not be the answer either, because, that's not, like, yeah, I mean, like, that just perpetuates that, okay, only the really wealthy people are going to go to the quote unquote most prestigious schools.
well, what
Right.
will happen is, Henry Blodgett pointed this out to me 10 years ago. If Harvard raised their tuition to $300,000 a year, right
Yeah.
now it's $66,000 a year. If they raise their tuition to $300,000 a year, they would still fill every spot.
Wow.
Because the rich
Yeah,
would
yeah.
send their kids, the kings would
Yeah.
send their kids there.
Yeah, wow.
And he's probably right. I mean,
Yeah,
he went
he's-
to Harvard, so he has the sense
Yeah.
of the value of the networking and the connections that he got. He infamously became
Yeah.
the face of the bust
Yeah.
of the internet, but then he sold Business Insider 15 years later for 300
Yeah.
million. So he's had his ups and downs, but smart
Seems
guy.
like he's got some ups lately.
Yeah, he's had more ups than downs lately, certainly.
Yeah.
But again,
But it does speak about that, because I happen to read the book $1 Billion Whale, and they talked about Joe Low, and he went to Wharton and met all these people that wound up, from schools. And yeah, there's a certain degree of elitism and
right. So,
Yeah, yeah.
elitism, networking. But again,
Yeah.
that's a book about a guy who
Yes.
stole $1 billion from Malaysia.
correct.
So it's not like anybody's learning values in these schools.
That's true too. Yes.
So there's a lot of things you can learn. Like I spoke to a guy once on, I had this podcast for a while, Ask Altucher. So this
Yeah.
was 3 or 4 years ago. I spoke to a guy who did the entire 4-year MIT computer science degree
Right.
online. They put their entire
Oh, wow.
syllabus
Yeah,
and curriculum online. They take videos of all the courses. He watched all the videos. He did all the homework and got it graded.
Right.
He took all the tests. He did it all within 12 months instead of 4 years.
Wow.
So he was proof that you can get the skill
Wow.
faster and cheaper. He paid
Sure.
nothing for it.
Wow.
But what did he not get? He did not get a degree.
Wow.
So the degree you got to pay $250,000
Sure.
for, and then with interest $1 million for.
Yeah. Wow.
So what's the
Yeah.
point?
And I
Again,
imagine
love
it comes down to most people, let alone at 50, at 18. Well, maybe more people are likely to have the confidence to say, I don't need all that. I don't need, but I think there are times in your life you get socialized and you need that. You need to wear a certain type of clothing. You need to go to a certain type of school. You need to eat at a certain kind of restaurant, drive a certain kind of car. I feel, people in marketing talk about like you buy things because how it makes you feel. and you do things because how it makes you feel.
Yeah,
And
but just think
yeah.
about it though. Like your body, if something makes you feel something because an advertiser.
Yes.
Like, why would you
Yes.
drink a Coca-Cola? It's because advertisers for 100 years
Yes.
are saying, "Oh, Coke is it."
Right.
Taste the real thing. But if you look at the actual numbers,
Yeah.
you basically just with these first two commandments,
Yeah.
owning a home and going to college, which everybody does, you basically cost yourself between $1 and $5 million, depending on how you do it, in the time of your life, which was the money you needed to retire,
Yes.
and without doing anything else, you could have just by not owning a home and not going to college, all of your kids
Yes.
will be able to take care of themselves.
Wow.
And if you're 18, considering college,
Yeah.
this is an important. You have to think about your future, and you don't think about your future by getting a neurobiology degree you're never going to
Yeah.
use. You think about your future by working, by skill acquisition, which people end
Yes.
up after your first job anyway. People only value your skills; they don't value your degree. First job
Sure.
is the only one they might say, "Hey, what was your degree?"
Yeah.
We only went through 2 of the 10 commandments of the American religion. And another thing we can veer
Well, I
into
encourage
is
people to read it, and
well,
we should post it.
no,
Yeah.
we'll do the next block because
Oh,
then
yeah.
I also want to do 10 scams you encounter every day. We're gonna bleed
Okay,
into that.
perfect.
But if anybody wants to argue with me on social media, which is the only purpose of social media now, is arguing because they love it when you argue on social media because that's how they make money for every argument you have. Basically, like I see all these people going back and forth. Well, I guess you don't have any morals. Well, I guess you're like a Hitler. And every time everybody reloads to see, oh, did they respond to my fascinating argument that I made from my suburban air-conditioned home with my Ivy League degree I spent $1 million for? Every time you click on a reload like an idiot,
Yeah.
Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they all make money. So if you want to argue with me on Twitter about this or make some good points, which I will respond to, let me know. And if you have any other commandments that you want to hear about or that you think are, scams in American culture and society or world culture and society, tweet to me or tweet to Steve, who
Yes.
doesn't have a tweeting
I'm gonna
name.
have one. And that is something that
Takes 3
I know.
minutes.
I'm doing it. I got it. You're right. I like to say, why put it for tomorrow? Which you can do the day after tomorrow.
Do you think I'm too hard on you on these
No, I think
podcasts?
you're 100% right. I think
kinda
that you-
mean.
No, not at all. No, honestly.
Steve's the best.
No, I'm not. No, I think it's good. I think if you can't stand the heat, then get out of the kitchen.
Well, we today's we're going. Let me just tell you how great Steve is.
yeah.
No Supreme Court justice has gone on any podcast.
Yeah.
Next Monday, which is going to be
Yeah. Mr.
before
Smith
this
goes first.
podcast airs. Next Monday, we're going to the U.S. Supreme Court
Yes.
and talking to Sonia Sotomayor.
Yes.
And I'm super excited about it. And Steve's the only producer I think who could have
but
landed that.
I think I'm excited about that, and hopefully we'll get some other people in DC for you guys to listen to.
Did you call Barack Obama?
I
asked you to
did.
call
We
Barack Obama.
have reached out to him, and we hopefully he can make it again. If you don't ask, the answer is always no for you people out there. So
Hey, can we talk to Betsy DeVos? The Department of Education Secretary.
Yeah, for sure.
Talk about
That's
college.
a great idea, for sure.
And Elijah Cummings you're
they
going to
used
reach out
be
to?
at Dick DeVos at they started Amway. That's that family. And I think she's kind of a controversial person. I'd also, I think, I think it'd be terrific. Yeah.
You know what I want to talk
And
about
if
too?
anybody out there in our audio experience land, if you want to suggest any people to me at my soon to be open Twitter account, then you'll let me know, and or James can retweet it to me because he's an early adapter. And but I'm excited to interact with you all with all positive thoughts, like all social media is, like only positive interactions.
Okay, well.
And Jack Dorsey, I'm excited to be working with you soon on Twitter.
Hey, can we get Jack Dorsey on the podcast?
Yeah, he's done every
He's
other
on
podcast.
Joe Rogan's.
Yes.
And he was on
He
Ben
did.
Shapiro's.
He did
Wasn't
Bill
he on Ben
Simmons.
Shapiro's?
He did Sam Harris's. He
Sam
did
Harris.
Joe
Sam
Rogan.
Harris, yeah. And here's one that's not. I've never written about this, but here's a topic I want to talk about. Maybe not on this podcast, obviously, but on the one of the next few. But there was an op-ed. I don't know what newspaper because I don't read the news, but it was either New York Times or Washington Post or something like that. There was an op-ed that billionaires shouldn't be, or no, it was called "Ban Billionaires," right?
Yeah, I think.
So I want to, since I have a book coming out called "Think Like a Billionaire," and because we've interviewed so many billionaires, I really think it's. And then AOC, the congresswoman, who such a great strategist and campaigner. I completely disagree with her on almost every economic issue. But she even said about Howard Schultz running for. And I'm not saying Howard Schultz will be good or bad. I know nothing about him politically. But she even said, why don't you start from the bottom and rise up? Which is such a weird thing to say because this is a guy who's created a million jobs.
Yeah, 100%.
And worked his whole life, creating and having an impact on culture. And he's such a charitable philanthropist and so on. Anyway, that's a topic that's interesting to me
Absolutely.
too. And I think the income inequality created by this college stuff is causing these ridiculous op-eds like that.
Yeah, I think, there's definitely, I mean, if that's you've done the math, and I think that it has led to a lot of it, because if these people are always, in quicksand and
they get angry.
Yeah. Yes.
So Jay is telling us we have to wrap. There's another podcast coming in here.
Yeah.
Steve, thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
And
James. I'm excited.
audience, please tell me if you like this kind of podcast or not, and feel free to contribute your thoughts and opinions. You can even email me, altucher@gmail.com, or call me at 203-512-2161, and talk to you soon.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.